All right, Gregory back here again for another video book review. And I'm changing things up. My original plan was just review the books in order of having read them. But in honor of Halloween, I'm going to do some spooky month book reviews, starting with Stephen Graham Jones's The Only Good Indians. And this is a book I read a couple years ago as part of a book club, and which is why I have it in hardcover. When we read it, it was only available in hardcover, so my choice was hardcover ebook. So I went with the hardcover to support the author instead. Also, I just prefer a physical book in my hands. But before I get into the review, please like, subscribe, and comment if possible. Let me know if you've read any of Jones, what you thought, and let me know what you would like to see in this channel. All right, so let's get on with our Spooktober review. And first, a little bit about Stephen Graham Jones. He is Blackfoot Native American, and on top of being a prolific writer, horror movie enthusiast, and honestly, just a fantastic Twitter follow, he's also an English professor and at the University of Boulder, I believe, here in Colorado. And his mastery of the English language is really on full display in this novel. So I don't really think of it as a Halloween book, but at the same time, I don't think just because of horror, something is horror, it's Halloween. So that's just me. But this is a very great horror book, and October is synonymous with horror stuff. So I'll be reviewing it here today. And I'm going to give more plot than I would like to, just because I feel like it sets up what this book is about. So the book starts with a Blackfeet man named Ricky, who, after seeing an elk smash a bunch of cars outside of a bar, is then chased by a bunch of white guys coming in from the bar that assumes he's the one who's done all this damage to the car. So he runs from them, but in the field he encounters a herd of elk, which chase him into the mob, who beat him to death. And like any good horror, we get a first kill that really sets the tone for the reader. But you understand here that the elk are somehow going to be into play. So we don't get much, but we know there's going to be elk involved. So, and we know it's going to be kind of brutal. We then move on to Ricky's childhood friend, Lewis, who is a postal worker who's moved off the reservation and lives with his white wife, PETA. We find Lewis climbing a ladder to change a light bulb, and when he sees in the flickering light dead elk on the floor of the house, he nearly falls to his death, but PETA saves him. And then this is where we really get into where the elk come into play, as this triggers Lewis to start thinking about a time where himself, Ricky, and their friends Gabe and Cass are hunting a herd of elk that they chase into the elders section of the reservation, which isn't allowed for them to be hunting in legally or traditionally. They kill several of the elk, and Lewis discovers that one of the elk he shot is a young pregnant female who isn't dead. And he removes the fetus from the female and he buries it while committing to use every part of this elk and giving the meat to the elders of the reservation, kind of making a pact with the elk to honor her. And so after removing the fetus and they carve up the elk, the guys try and get the elk back to their truck, but the game warden stops them and he makes them discard the elk carcasses. So Lucas shares this story with his wife and his Crow co-worker, Shaney, Crow Native American, not animal, if that's not clear, which if it's not, that's kind of a shame. But at the same time, we are talking about killer elk in this. So he starts to believe Shaney is the elk spirit as he becomes more and more paranoid, and he orchestrates an accident to kill her. And then he works on trying to confirm she is the elk spirit, but can't. We move on to his wife, who is working on changing that same pesky light bulb and has the same accident, but he doesn't intervene to save her like she did for him. And so he sets about trying to find out if she is the elk spirit that has come for him. And while doing this, he discovers she is pregnant. He ends up cutting her open to discover it's an elk fetus from her. He then flees with the fetus, but during a manhunt for the murder and mutilations of these two women, he is shot dead. Then we get the elk spirit, whose name is Ponoka. I am apologizing if I butchered that pronunciation. She sets out to revenge her herd and calf. As she rapidly starts becoming more and more human looking, she makes her way to the reservation for this revenge. This all happens in the first 40% of the book or so. And honestly, it feels that even though it is kind of really plot heavy, it is just a really long exposition setting up what is to come for the rest of the story. Because we get quite a few more deaths, and I think I've not read a lot of horror genre books myself, but this is one of the most tense battles with the final girl I've ever seen, ever read. So, and that really does. This novel does a lot, even though it is just a great horror story on its own. It is way more than that. For me, any great piece of genre fiction, whether it's going to be horror, if it's going to be fantasy, sci-fi, crime fiction, it needs to stand up on its own and as a literary novel as well. And this does that as to a great extent. Like Jones is just a fantastic author. As I said earlier, it's really, really on display here, and it really works on its own in that regard as well. As far as Jones being a Native American author, I've read a handful of works by other Native American authors. I'm never going to claim to be an expert on the subject, but it is something I'm curious about and have read quite a few. And it does share a lot of things in common with those in the life of the reservations. It seems that there are some common throughways through whatever the reservation, whoever the author. But at the same time, this book is completely its own thing. And as much as it has in common with some other Native American authors, it really is in a class all of its own, as it should be. And I can gush on and on over this novel, but I just recommend you read it. But to talk up a little more on Jones, he was nominated for many awards for this book, including the Audie Awards for Thriller and Suspense, the Lucas Horror Award for Horror and World Fantasy Award for Best Novel. Sorry, the Lucas Award for Horror and the World Fantasy Award for Best Novel are two different awards there. It also won the Ray Bradbury Prize for Science Fiction, Fantasy and Speculative Fiction, which is just one single award there. I know it's a lot of words for it. The Bram Stoker Award for Novel and the Shirley Jackson Award for Novel. And those are three pretty hefty awards in the genre fiction. Obviously, like Ray Bradbury, Bram Stoker, and Shirley Jackson are like well regarded and well known novelists themselves. So to win those awards is really, really high praise for this piece of work. And it really, really is well deserved. I love this book. I've been a big follower of Jones since I read this book, probably fall of 2020, so not long after it came out, because I think it was June or July of that year that it came out. And picked up another one. I've got a few more on his list. I've sent a couple of his books out as gifts for other people. So I highly recommend checking it out. And if you would like to do so, I will include a link to the book in the bio of this video. But of course, like, go support your local bookstore and check it out. I mean, if they don't have it, they'll probably be able to order it. And if they don't have this one, they might have one of his others. My Heart is a Chainsaw is a great one as well. So yeah, please. I mean, it's always important to support authors, and I think this one's an excellent novel. So until the next video, thank you guys.